Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the moments people had to let go of destructive pattern, meeting identity, the internal battles to rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. My guest is Chuck Mobley, a poor kid from Tarsis town of 250 people who moved to Cayman Island with $100. With $100, ran out of money, slept on the beach, got fired, and started business anyway, becoming a pilot with questionable landing skills, survived near death adventure across multiple countries, and did mission work around the world, raised 4 kids, and stopped a parade to meet his wife. And somewhere became the Amazon bestseller author. Leap before you look, but God. The talks prove that God has sense of humor and that ordinary people can live extraordinary life if they are willing to move before they feel ready. The defining moment was what made staying no longer an option. A choke word was he didn't have a whole lot of choices. It's really a pleasure and honor having you on the show.
Thank you, Benaiah. I appreciate it. And my questionable landing skills, I'm still here, so I must have landed.
Thank you so much. So, Chooks, you arrive in Cayman Island with $100 of homeless on the beach. Most people in this particular situation would have bought tickets back home. What did you have to quit believing about failure, pride, and what going back would mean before you could actually figure it out?
Okay, when you say most people would have bought a ticket, remember, I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
So, and not only it was $100. So,
Yeah.
but Benaiah, when you come to the Cayman Islands with $100, it immediately in Cayman dollars, it's only 80. Our dollar is
Oh,
stronger than our dollar. So I really only had $80, and I
yeah.
had a hotel voucher, but only for a few nights. And so I didn't have a lot of choice. I did think about going home, but I had a one-way ticket.
Yeah. That was really a whole lot.
And I would have gone home anyway. I went to Cayman with a purpose. I actually came here in 1984 to work for 5 months to make enough money to try to get back into university to study. And I ended up staying here. It's 2026.
Yeah.
Next week will be 42 years that since I slept on that beach.
Yeah.
And so my 5 months turned into 42 years.
Amazing, amazing. So, what does a small town teaches a person about risk that a big city?
I think in a small town. Well, I was a kid. We moved from Los Angeles with millions of people to a little town in Texas called Pine Forest. It doesn't even have a high school. 250 people. I burnt the entire forest down within a week of moving there. So I made an impact immediately. But I think what we learn in small towns is self-reliance. I mean, the closest little convenience store was about a mile and a half away. And my uncle would give my cousin and I a quarter, 25 cents. And we would walk that mile and a half. And it's amazing what you could buy with 25 cents back in the late 60s. Early
Yeah.
70s. But we learned, I mean, we went out in the forest and we built forts. And I'm an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid. I would sleep all night in the forest. We would swim in rivers and creeks. We would catch fish. We would kill snakes. So we definitely weren't sheltered. So I guess living in a small town, we learned self-reliance. We learned to appreciate things like a quarter. You know, that quarter seemed like $1 million back then when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. But small towns form us in a lot of ways. They shelter us in a lot of ways as well. I'm going to tell you something that I don't express very often, but because you're a person of color, I went my whole life without ever going to school or being close to anyone of color. And I'm talking about Asian people, Latin people, Black people, and it was a pearly white community,
Yeah.
I would call it. And then when I came to the Cayman Islands, the most people are of some mixture. There we have Black people, we have mixed people, and a white population would be very small percent, maybe 50% of the population. So that was kind of eye-popping for me as well. And it was really good for me to mature as an adult, having never been exposed to Black culture and then be suddenly thrown into the middle of the Caribbean where I'm surrounded people different from me.
Yeah, it's really amazing and a whole lot of things to get to learn here. And getting fired is a kind of things most people spend years avoiding now. What did losing that particular job or make possible that keeping it never could? And how did you have to quit grieving about it before you could actually see it clearly?
So why do you have to bring up me getting fired, man? No, man, besides finding Jesus and finding my wife, which I did, yes,
Yeah.
your introduction, stopped a parade
Yeah.
and jumped on the float to meet her. Aside from that, being fired was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Everybody is fired for unjust reason, unjust cause, at least in their mind. The same is true in my case. I was driving my personal car, subsidizing a local air conditioning company here in Cayman, and I was getting compensated very little for my gas and upkeep on my car. And really, an air conditioning company or any service company should have their own vehicles.
Yeah.
They shouldn't rely on their employees' cars. So when my car broke down, I had to rent a car actually to do work for this
Yeah.
company. And that's when I drew the line and I said, look, I'm willing to work. I want to work, but you really need to provide us technicians with a vehicle. And he said he would think about it, and we gave him about 9 months. And then when that 9-month deadline came up, I told him, I said, I'm willing to work. I want to work, but my car is going to have to stay in the parking lot. And that's when I was fired. And by the time I got home to my little apartment, drinking coffee that I really didn't feel like drinking and really scared. I was, it was
Yeah.
early 20s. I just gotten married. I had promised over 400 people at my wedding, I'll
Yeah.
support you, I'll provide for you, I'll be your provider. And then I couldn't even, provide dinner. But sitting in that apartment, my phone rang and it was a customer. Said, Chuck, what's happening? We called and we have a problem at our condominium complex. And they said that you're no longer there. And then that they don't have any technicians. And I said, well, and I was fired along with 3 other guys and who were sitting there in my apartment trying to figure out what we were going to do. Across and I saw 3 capable Caymanian technicians. And I told the lady on the phone, I said, you know what? I can have somebody there in 20 minutes. I couldn't work because I was on a work permit as an expatriate. I sent 2 of the guys. They fixed it. They fixed 2 units. And then a couple hours later, somebody else called.
Ooh.
And that's how the business started. It was slow, but we got a few calls every day. Eventually, after a year, Benaiah, my partners couldn't afford to continue this lifestyle because we were paying ourselves, a very minimum wage. It wasn't even enough to live on. My wife was working, so I could do it. So I eventually bought my partners out, and after like a year and a half, I became the sole owner. Named the company Polar Bear Air Conditioning after an ice cream store I used to stop at in Texas. And today in 2026, I no longer work in the company. I've passed it on to my children. So I have a son that runs the business and have a daughter that does the marketing. We have 45 employees from 14 or 15 different countries.
Wow.
And we have close to we've since started appliances and plumbing. And between the 3 companies, we have close to, we're closing in on 4,000 5-star reviews. So that little humble start from, and this is from somebody that I don't have a business degree. In fact, I don't have any degree. I went to trade school to learn how to fix air conditioners. So to any of your listeners here, I honestly, humbly say this, if I can do it, you can do this. You could do it as well, because I find that business is more about common sense. And the one thing that I think I credit with our success, I think I had God's favor and just the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. And it works with customers, it works with our vendors, it works with our employees. And if you just treat people the way you want to be treated, everything else, seems to work. Seems to work out.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, business is all about common sense. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And this is really amazing. And also, you stop parade to meet your wife out. That's a specific kind of courage. What did you have to quit caring about the embarrassment, the foolishness, the other people's opinion? That most people never quit. I never actually more like think that's the
My book is called Leap Before You Look,
Yeah.
But God. And I've spent most of my life jumping into things, leaping into things, even literally jumping off a cliff into rough seas before looking down to make sure, the water was calm enough, which it wasn't. And I had to tread water for about an hour before it calmed down. But so this particular, I'd been in Cayman for 2 months. This was in 1984. And we have a festival called Pirates Week. And we have a big parade with a lot of floats. Well, there was a suntan lotion company called Hawaiian Tropic. And they had a contest. It's the Miss Hawaiian Tropic. So there's this float with all these girls in bikinis and the beautiful women in bikinis, and there's music blaring, there's steel pan bands going, there's thousands of people watching this parade. And I look up on this float and I see the most beautiful woman I had ever laid my eyes on. And that's not an exaggeration. If you see the pictures in my book, you'll agree with me. So, but there was a little difference whether she had on a blouse and she had on shorts. She wasn't in a bikini, but yes, she was in this contest. And I thought to myself, who is that? It was like you have this picture of what kind of woman you want to marry and you have it in your mind. And then she looked just like that. And I thought, I've got to meet her. And then I don't know if you wrestle in your mind and your mind will say, well, what my mind told me was, man, shut up. She's way too good for you. And then the other side says, yeah, but she doesn't know that. Maybe she'll like me. And the other side says, man, you're going to embarrass yourself. You're going to get arrested. She might slap you in the face. She's going to ignore you in front of everybody. And I said, you know what? I don't care. I ran after the float. I jumped on it, leaped on it, and introduced myself. And we started talking. And I stayed on the float during the whole parade. And I started doing the waving to the people. People must be wondering, what is this ugly guy doing on the float with these beauty queens?
Yeah.
But 2.5 years later, in 1987, we were married. So I married this girl, and I often wonder, had I not jumped on that float, would I have ever even met her? I probably would have, because Cayman is a very small island. But that's how I met my wife. And people always ask us how we met. I said, you have a while? You have a minute? Because it takes a little while to. And next May we'll celebrate 40 years of marriage. We have four kids and 2 grandkids, and we're still together, still going strong after all these years.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Oh, it's
The best
amazing.
leap, one of the best leaps I ever made.
Yeah, this is really amazing. I think after this story, I should be looking forward to my own leaping. Yeah, thank you. And also, you have survived multiple near-death experiences across multiple countries. What did coming close to the end teach you about how you were living?
Well, anytime you have a near-death experience, you want to make sure that you're right with God.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I became a Christian at a very young age. I was 7 years old, and I had already burned the forest down, and I was an arsonist, so I knew I needed Jesus. So in those moments, there's moments of panic. I've almost drowned in a Dominican river. I got sucked into a whirlpool, and then I jumped off a cliff in Cayman into I was showing off I was playing tour guide, and we have these cliffs on one side of Cayman, and I jumped off of it multiple times, but I had always checked the water to make sure it was calm enough. Well, this time I didn't check it. I just wanted to impress my family who were visiting from Texas. So I jumped off this cliff, get into the water, and realized that the seas are just raging. And I tried to swim to shore, and every time I would get just slammed into this sharp, I don't know if you would know what iron shore is, but it's this very sharp volcanic rock that forms the shore on this side of the island. And I was getting all cut up. So I actually had to swim out maybe 50 yards and just tread water. And tread water. And my sisters who were watching from way up above, they called. One of them had to leave because we didn't have cell phones back then, and I don't think there was 911 back then. But they went down the road to get somebody to call the police. Fortunately, before the police got there, I was able to find a break in the waves, and I got out. I was all cut up and scratched up, but I think the hand of God has nullified some of my stupidity sometimes.
Yeah.
Also, I did a skydive a solo skydive after 4 hours of training. And I mean, this is not a tandem where you're strapped onto a real skydiver. I did it myself. And I thought everything was going fine. I thought it was going a little faster than I expected it. But the guy's screaming, I'm hooked up to a radio. And he says, I looked up and it looked like a broken umbrella. My parachute was like, it was only halfway open and I could see the lines were twisted. And he's screaming in my radio that I'm hooked up to, twist your legs, twist your legs. So I start twisting my legs and he says, no, the other way. So I twisted them the other way. And then the cords untangled and then the thing opened up. And then the rest of the thing, it was just like I had pictured it. It was peaceful. It was great. But being in the plane and getting ready to jump, I was really scared.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I would. I didn't think I would be. And if nobody would have been on the ground waiting for me, I might have backed out. I was that scared.
Yeah.
But my wife and kids and some friends were down below waiting. I said, "No, I gotta jump." But all these things, I think God has a purpose for me, and I don't think He's finished writing my chapter. I mean, I could probably list another 10, near-death experiences that I've had.
So what?
One was really there was a plane I was supposed to be on that crashed, taking hurricane supplies to Jamaica just last November. And one of my friends, he was piloting that and he was killed. And for all intents and purposes, I was supposed to be on that plane. Now it's hard to say, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Because somebody lost their life and a good missionary man of God lost his life. So I guess I just don't feel like God has written the last chapter in my book yet, in my book of life. So He continued to, His hand is always there.
Yeah. It's really amazing. Thank you.
But it makes you, when you pass through things like that, it does give you an appreciation for life, and it gives you appreciation that you wake up the next day and your loved ones are there. But it also gives me a little bit of an adrenaline rush too. It's like a hunger for, can I survive that? What else can I?
So you describe taking the scenic route of faith. What does someone has to quit expecting from God? A straight line, a clear map, a logical sequence, before one can actually enjoy the scenic route.
But the scenic route is actually not a compliment. What I mean by that is when my wife became a Christian, she was 19 years old, and she became a Christian, and it was just like, boom. And now she's getting ordained shortly. She has a master's degree in theology. She's never wavered, there's a song that we sing in Christendom. It's no turning back, no turning back.
I have decided to follow Jesus.
No turning back, no turning back. And she never has turned to the right or the left. She's just gone. And my Christian walk there's been whiplash. There's been up and down like a carnival ride, like a roller coaster. There's been times I've wandered far from the Lord. There's been times where I've lived in a way that was completely polar opposite of my upbringing and my Christian beliefs. But God has always been there before I was. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted to leave Texas and one of the reasons I left was to get away from that Christian title. And I was always that Christian boy. Even though I was always in trouble and mischievous, I was still a Christian boy. And I thought, when I come to Cayman, nobody knows me. Nobody knows that I'm supposed to be good, and I'm going to sow my wild oats. And it didn't take. One of the things that I found out when I met my future wife on that float was that she was a strong Christian woman. Hence, she wasn't parading around in a bikini. She had on a blouse and short pants. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but she's just very, very modest. By the way, she won the contest.
Yeah.
And it was like God was saying, and I found out from a friend, I asked about her. Because although we talked and everything, I didn't ask her for a date or anything like that. That's how we met. And I asked a friend, I said, who is that lady? And he said, man, Chuck, don't mess with her. No man is going to get her. And he meant that in like a sexual way, and another way that she wasn't dating anybody and that she turned everybody down. And I found that so refreshing. And then I felt like the Holy Spirit kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, that's interesting. Don't you think she wants the same thing in a man? And I'm thinking, man, I just going to sow my wild oats, and then God is going to put this woman in my life. So I couldn't even go off that direction, because I knew that, if that's what I looked for in a woman, certainly she would be looking for the same thing in a man. And so just meeting her made me examine my life and made me go back to my roots and my Christian faith.
Yeah, this is really, really amazing. And Thank you so much for sharing. Your book is called Leap Before You Look, but God. Most people are taught the opposite, look before you leap. What does consistently leaping before you look actually teach you about faith that careful planning never could?
I don't know. I guess it teaches me something that I can rely on God. And I'm not saying that we can do stupid things and God's gonna bail us out all the time, because I think that there's consequences for our actions, and sometimes the consequences are just the natural consequences of doing something stupid. But what I have found is that if I think too long about doing something, if I weigh the positive and the pros and the cons, and if I try to get myself ready, I'm never ready. We're never ready to do most of the things that we need to do. And so I learned early that just do it. Once you force yourself out there, you'll figure it out. I didn't know how to run a company, but I could have went and tried to get a job at another company. But I just decided, okay, this is going to be my fate. I'm going to leap into this business. I'm going to leap onto this float. If I get arrested, if I get slapped in the face, then face that tomorrow. But I've learned not to think too much and try to be ready and try to be prepared, because I just find that we always wait until we're prepared or we're ready, and we never are. So what I've learned mainly is that we can talk ourselves out of a lot of things because of what if.
Yeah, we can talk ourselves out of a whole lot of things because of what if. And this is really, really amazing. And it has really been a pleasure having you on the show. So from all those who would love to connect with you, get your book, and where can listener find your book and follow your ongoing adventure?
My book is on Amazon, Leap Before You Look, But God. I have a copy of it here. It's got an interesting little
before you leave.
cover on it. So Leap Before You Look, But God on Amazon. It's available as an ebook on Kindle. It's available as a hard copy, like I just showed you. And it's now available in audio, which I narrate it myself.
Yeah. Ooh.
And I sing on it. I laugh on it. I make fun of people. I mimic people on the thing. My wife even talks about, she speaks in the book. And I have a website called chuckmobley.com. And that has a link to the book as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chuck. Thank you for reminding that God can use ordinary people in extraordinary way, especially the ones who leap before they are ready. It's exactly what this audience needed to hear. Audience, so love to get the book and reach out. Check the show notes to see the link to easily do that. Yeah, remember, staying where it is safe and familiar is never the whole stories. Leaping before you look, but God is where the real ones begin. Once again, it's really a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show.
No, it was my pleasure. And you remember, you need to do some leaping too.